Welcome to mypersonalfootballcoach.com's Soccer Player Development Podcast. Discover all the secrets, hints and tips about soccer player development and soccer coaching from some of the leading figures in world soccer. Here's your host, Saul Isaacson Hurst.
What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the show. This week's guest is Kylrn Brooks-Lynch. Kylrn is a coach who now works out in Colombia. He's head of methodology at a club out there in South America. Previously worked at Brighton in the academy as well. And I came across Kylrn through recommendation for a mutual friend. And someone really interesting someone who's had taken a really brave step and chosen to go and work out in Colombia. And really interesting story. Great to hear his background working in academy football, and now that interesting work now he's doing in South America. So great he jumped on the show and told us about his really interesting story. So I know you're going to enjoy this one, and don't forget, remember, if you're interested in one-to-one coaching or in individual coaching, check out my new online coaching course for one-to-one coaches. You can get a discount code as well, one-to-one coach 20 off. That's 20% off, exclusive to you guys on the podcast. Remember, there's a deep dive into my methodology about coaching individual players, which has been proven at the highest level. Also a session library with professional player sessions and grassroots player sessions, and also hints and tips from myself about socials and business development, and some of the best practitioners in the game. So some people I've brought in as well and interviewed as well. So try it out. Remember, 20% off if you want to. And without further ado, let's get into the show. Right, welcome back to another coach development podcast with Glenn Hicks, Academy Coach. Glenn Hicks, how you doing, Glenn?
Very well, thanks, mate.
And very special guest all the way from Colombia, Kylrn Brooks-Lynch. How are we doing?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. I'm really well. And feel free to call me Kai, by the way.
Kai, might help. Actually got that tricky first name out of the way. But Kai, listen, I've known of you for a good time. Harry, my good friend Harry Watlin, recommended getting you on the show a while ago as well. Harry, maybe a mutual contact, and good to see, because you've got a really interesting story. Worked in the Premier League academy football, and now you're in Colombia. But before we get on, I always ask my guests the same question. Give us a brief outline of your playing and coaching journey, just to give everyone a little bit of a taste.
Yeah, sure. So firstly, thanks for having me on. So my journey has been, I never played professionally. I played at a reasonable standard in terms of youth academy, had opportunities, never quite made it, and went into coaching really early, because I was injured for such a long time, frankly. Fell in love with the idea of the X's and O's a little bit, and started my journey. Went to college, did a football course, went to university, did a degree in sports science whilst coaching, started my own business, then eventually worked for MK Dons in an academy whilst doing my B licence and running my business. Worked a little bit in non-league football as well, kind of step 4, step 5. And then fast forward a little bit, I was fortunate enough to get on the Premier League program working at Brighton. I was there for 3.5 years, and now I've been in Colombia for almost a year. So that's like a whistle-stop tour.
And just tell everyone what's your current role in Colombia.
So I'm currently the head of methodology and under-17s head coach of AAFP, which is the Alemana de Fútbol Popayán, which is basically the German academy in Colombia, in Popayán, which is a city that we run from.
So it's a German academy?
That's right. So we've been running for maybe 8 years. The owners, who are 2 German gentlemen, moved to Colombia, as I'm sure there's a whole bunch of good things to do in Colombia other than football. And they started their academy. And their objective is to get the best players from around the country to try to run an academy as close to European standards as possible, and open avenues and opportunities for them to play around the world. So had a really high success rate considering where they've come from. I think they've maybe had 9 or 10 professionals over the last 9 years, or 8 years, sorry. Which again, for a new academy, that's excellent. And some players are playing in the US, Mexico, and Colombia, UAE, and we now have a formal affiliation with Red Bull Salzburg as well. So we've had, I think, 3 players over the course of the time signed for them.
Interesting. And how many players are in the academy? And what age groups? Just tell us about it.
Yeah, so obviously the under-17s is who I lead. an under 15s age group, and for the first time an under 13s age group as well. So as part of the journey that we're going on, we're starting to get players younger. Historically, it's only been kind of 2 teams at an under 17s age group, whereas now that we've got a little bit more stability, we're able to get younger players. So a 13s, a 15s, and a 17s at the moment.
Interesting. Why don't you come in here, Glenn? And
yeah, I was just going to say, it's you've got fantastic academies there. We all know Brighton's one of the most progressive the last 10 years, isn't it, Kai? And I'm sure you took some brilliant experiences from being here in the academy system, both at MK Dons. It ain't just Dele Alli. MK Dons have been doing some good stuff with young players. I know Dele Alli is like the pinnacle, but a lot of people that are not in academies don't see the good work that's going on. People are obsessed with one academies and stuff, but in terms of you've seen it at Brighton as well, how well they've progressed. They've got an amazing stadium. We all see it in the Premier League level, but people don't see the stuff behind the scenes, and it's been going on for a long time at Brighton. So, in terms of seeing a club like Brighton progress to the Amex Stadium, the amazing training centre they've got, which is first class, I believe is as good as anything in the country. Is there a lot of stuff that you've taken from there? Because I'm intrigued about Colombia. I want to get to know about the culture of the football stuff. Is there a lot of stuff you've taken from those experiences that actually it needs to be implemented in Colombia in terms of the infrastructures and stuff?
Definitely. So as you mentioned, the facilities and the infrastructure at Brighton is second to none, frankly. There's some top ones out there, but Brighton is right out there with the best of them. As you can imagine, working in Colombia, it's not quite the same. So to try to take as much of the roots of the ideas more than the infrastructure naturally, so just trying to be as organised as possible, trying to have as much alignment across the different age groups, and trying to bring that, I'm going to call it a European academy style, that once we understand how we want to look as an academy, to make sure that has a consistency to it long after I leave. That for me is some of the things I'm really trying to implement. So in terms of infrastructure, it's more about maybe the alignment. The alignment is probably what I've taken most.
Let's go back there. Let's think about your journey, because obviously that's a really interesting project. But I want to think about how you got to this point. So, talk about those early experiences at MK Dons. What was that like? Your initial, how was it going into that academy? Like say, top academy. Great history of developing players. Tell us about your first experiences there. Some of the challenges, and I'm always interested in there about the nitty gritty, about you putting the sessions on and stuff like that.
Yeah. So one thing that I think at the time I didn't realise, but having reflected on my journey, I was probably more ready to step into an academy environment, having worked as, and I'm sure many would have done it, and you guys as well. You work after school clubs for years with every type of child, with every type of ability for years on end. Then you start your own business. Again, you have some good players, not great players. You're putting on sessions with 10 footballs and 30 kids, and some of them are top that could play at academy. Some of them, their parents just don't want them for the afternoon or whatever it might be. So having that experience before I stepped into MK Dons, and then having, at the time was the best player, probably the best players, or the standard of players I would have worked with, I was ready to be able to put the sessions on for them. So rather than being a little bit hodgepodge where you actually need to do this for that player and that for that player, because it's an after school club, I think suddenly when you've got quality with a unified objective, those sessions were really easy to do, and it just felt natural being there. So suddenly I was able to say, actually, we've got 15 players. I think at the time I was working with the 12s, 15 players or so, all driven, all with some quality, all being able to get them on the ball. And I know, so you're a real advocate of kind of ball manipulation and being able, that stuff for me, to be able to design these practices at a good level with good progression was amazing, and it came at the right time of my journey for sure.
Can you give us an example then, some of those sessions, some of those progressions that you were putting on there at MK Dons, and tie it into, was there a technical, tactical cycle? Tell us about the organisation there as well.
Yeah, so you're asking me to dig into my memory now. It's probably like 2018 maybe when I started at Dons. But for me, and the way that I've always seen it is, I love game style practices, and in order to be able to get to game style practices, you have to have a baseline. So a lot of the sessions, especially at the time that I would have done, were more games, and the more I went on and saw some of the deficiencies in some of maybe the basic the basic technical ability, then we ended up going backwards to go forwards. So we go into games because that was the idea. We play games, we press, we build, we create a normal curriculum, as it were. And then those gaps, it's like, how can we really drill down the detail of some of this technical detail? So again, lots of ball manipulation, lots of 1v1s. I love 3v3s. Even to this day, even today we had a session and we're doing 3v3s with these 18, because that for me is, you can't hide. You can't hide your technical level, and then when you see those deficiencies, you can go back and support those things. So in terms of the detail of what types of sessions, that would be my answer. So lots of 1v1s, finding the gaps where we can help, and then adding that stuff a little bit later down the line when we're doing different types of sessions.
And how long were you there at MK Dons?
So I was at MK until 2021. So I think it was 2018, the summer of 2018 until the spring of 2021 when I went to Brighton.
Interesting. Glenn, want to come back in here?
Yeah, so in terms of the change in methodology as well, so yeah, let's go on the methodology stuff. So from MK Dons to Brighton, was there a massive shift as well? Because look, the game is the game, right? What I see in football at the minute is everyone, you've only got to go online and just go football methodology, and you'll have everything thrown at you, but they all saying the same things, like, playing out from the back. Well, it's called build now, but it used to be called playing out from the back. I remember it on my B licence 20 odd years ago, POTB. Well, I'm like, what's that? I was playing out from the back, but now it's the build, and then it's the mid third, or flip it on its head, it's a mid block and a press. So in terms of not the generic football stuff, but in terms of the specifics of the difference between MK Dons and Brighton, because Brighton's got a fantastic history of getting people like, whether it's Evans Ferguson or the list of actually producing players. I think Brighton are right up there with many clubs. So what were the differences, or did you feel like it had been scaled up in terms of, wow, this is another level again from MK Dons? And yeah, I'm interested to know in terms of the technical practice and what was asked of you. Was there a huge difference, and what were those specifics?
So I guess when I joined MK, they were in a little bit of a state of transition. So it was not long since Dan Machici had left. The academy manager at the time, Steve Brown, had just been replaced as well. So there's a little bit of a transition phase. So there was a curriculum that maybe came in a few months after I joined that was very much, like you said, 3 phases of the game with the ball, 3 phases of the game without the ball, and they were still discovering exactly what they wanted that to look like because of the transitional phase, which gave us a lot of freedom, which again depended on how you look at that's either something that's really positive for a coach because they get to put their teeth into something, or somebody who's maybe a little bit newer or doesn't have that experience, it could be a challenge. So I would say that the evolution from working at MK to working at Brighton, it was really similar because the curriculums are quite, like you said, a lot of academy football does look the same. The difference for me, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, was the alignment. So every team had an idea to play the Brighton way. There was a clear philosophy in that a Brighton team should possess the ball, play attacking football, and press as early as possible. That was the strap line, as it were. And they gave their coaches an autonomy to they gave them the goal but didn't give them the direction to it. So for me, for instance, my first 8 months at Brighton, I got to work with the under 8s all the way through to the under 21s. So I was really able to kind of step back and see how true is this philosophy? How much do the coaches kind of buy into it, frankly? And every coach along the way, in their own way, achieved the same outcome. So the biggest difference for me was that although there was autonomy in both clubs, the clarity at Brighton was a little bit more, and that was mainly because MK Dons were going for a transition at the time.
Well, and what was your role at Brighton when you went there?
So I went on what is, I think, still called the SIDS program through the Premier League, which is a 2-year work placement ultimately, and I was tasked to spend 3 months working with every age group across my 2 years. That was the plan originally, and it was expedited, which is good. So probably the first 8 months I managed to work with all of the age groups, and then not long after, Brighton offered me a full-time job, which is top. So I was working with the 14s as an assistant with Dave Powderly. At the time he was the phase lead, and then the following year I led the 13s, and then I think the following year I assisted the 16s and did some support stuff with the 18s.
Top. I mean, I've been doing consultancy with the Brighton for the last season. Continue doing stuff this helping with their ball master individual stuff. So like, I know myself a top academy. So let's try and pick the bones a little bit and get some ideas what's set up. You've got some amazing facility. You've got this real forward thinking club. Got great staff there. Obviously Woody's the head of the academy now. Top guy head of the academy. Ben's doing the head of coaching. Tell us a bit about then. You said the coaches had autonomy there. But tell us a little bit about the frameworks, how you would work, week to week in terms of the guidance you get from the club in terms of how to work like that.
Yeah, so I guess the stepping backwards a little bit, linked to the autonomy wasn't only on the pitch. It was also in the meetings and in the offices when we're having these conversations. So when I first was working with the 4 teams, we had a really good group. So like I said, it was Dave Powderly, Dan Wright, who's still there, he's now the 16s lead, myself and Cam Morrison, who now works, I think he's at York, as one of the first team coaches. And we had a really good collective, and we kind of sat down and said, we get to train this many times a week, what do we need to cover, what's missing, how do we get a little bit more 1v1, 2v2, 3v3 stuff, because at the time that was probably not a focus of the club. And we were able to structure the week accordingly. So after match day, so we play on a Sunday, for instance, match day +1, what does that look like? How much technical work can we really get into them because it's a month? And then as the week changes and the load needs to change, because as everyone knows, we are guided by our strength and conditioning counterparts. So making sure that we get the intensity at the right time in the week, and how do we get our 1v1s? What do they look like? And some really good work was done by Dan about the types of different 1v1s we can then go and design. Is it a forwards 1v1? Is it a defenders 1v1? Where's the pressure coming from? So all of these kind of conversations we had then structured our week. So, and then we were able to see how often we were doing 1v1s, how often we were doing ball mastery, how often we were doing games, and that just kind of evolved over my time there. So probably from 2001, that September, for the next 2 years or so, we really evolved that process of making sure that all areas were covered. They get in the technical ball mastery stuff, they get in the games, as well as getting the real individual 1v1 moments that you can't hide from in the game.
And tell us about then, you transitioned to 13 head coach. Tell us about that. Were there any challenges involved in that? Were you going, being at his head coach role? And tell us a bit about that in terms of, what was that like for yourself?
I loved it, if I'm honest. I loved it. So I'm someone who, I like to think myself as quite studious. I love to learn from people. I think every coach on the planet has something that you can draw from. So having that time working with all of those individuals gave me some real good education. Frankly, it was like a university when you think about it. Having all those coaches to work with, and then saying, now how would I do it? Now that I have all of this information, what am I doing because I believe in? What am I doing because that's what I've seen? So that experience was really good for me. And at the time, I didn't have an assistant, so it meant that it's on you, like Kai, it's on you, get it done. And again, I love that. I think pressure is the thing that drives the most often, and it's the pressure that you put on yourself. So for me, I really enjoyed it.
And also, you mentioned Dan Machichi earlier. He's a friend of mine. He always has a go at me. He says, I don't ask people about their game model enough. I'm obsessed by the individual techniques. So tell us, this is one for Dan. Tell us about your game model then. What was the game model there like when you had those 13s? Give us a bit of an idea about that.
Yeah, so, and I guess we'll maybe touch on this a little bit later when we speak about the Colombia stuff. With regards to our game model, especially in Brighton, because there was such a clear way of playing, such a clear identity that we had to go after, the game model almost was already made for us. The difference for me was, or at least the way I always see it, is you have to go by the players that you have. So for instance, at that time, the group I had who were now they're now 16s, they had not a great deal of forwards, had loads of central defenders and loads of central midfielders, so we played in a different shape. So the way I see it is, if you have players who don't put a square peg in a square hole, that's how I kind of think about it. Of course they can play in different positions because they're young and they can evolve, but I think give them the platform to do what they are good at. That's kind of how that would be my game model. I don't know if that actually answers the question, but in academy football, my belief is put the players in the positions that they can do what they are best at.
Going to come back in?
Yeah, I wanted to. I was going to pounce on that because it's a really interesting point. So it's a bit like, So yes, clubs have recruitment teams. So listen, I've coached grassroots as well. So I remember doing my grassroots teams, Ilford FC and Ilford Colts, right from under 9s through to under 18s, right? You know, whoever turns up and wants to play, they come and join in and play. And, you know, like you were saying a minute ago, you have some of the best players in London that might go and get trials at pro, but then you've got an intermediate. Yes, academies are exclusive in terms of they've been recruited, they've gone through a recruitment process, but as we all know, the longer you've been in it, every age group's different. So you could do the under-12s for 5-10 years in a row, or the under-13s like yourself, but next year the demographic in terms of how many profiles of centre forwards or like goal scorers have we got, how many players that tend to look like back half players, and this is not me contradicting myself for things were said recently in terms of you don't want to box them up too early, but there are, so if you've got a lot of kids that are very, very small and undermaturated, well, you've got a small and undermaturated group. Well, if you've got a group of physically mature groups, do you know what I mean? So it's interesting that you say that, because I think it's something that all coaches go through, grassroots or academy. Yes, you're working with the under-13s, yes, you have a philosophy, but it's fascinating to hear you say, and I think it's a really important point for all coaches, you're adapting to the group's needs. Whether that's, I don't know, let's say the whole group go through a massive growth spurt, whereas last year actually they were maybe later developers, or like you say, you might have, I'll tell you what happens often sometimes, you sometimes get a group where there's an abundance of left footers, like maybe 6 in the group, but then the following year you might have none. So again, it does change the dynamic, and it's actually quite refreshing to hear that you actually go slightly away from the game model, say we're here to meet their needs, we're going to adapt it to get the best out of the players. So yeah, that's all I wanted to pounce on that as well, because I think it's really important to grassroots coaches and academy football in general with young kids. So
yeah, no, I appreciate it. And sorry, so but yeah,
no, go on, mate, go on, Kai.
It's just the way I see it. I don't think it's right or wrong. It's just in my mind, if I think about when I played, or when I played with friends in the street or whatever it might be, everyone has a personality in football. And it might not be the same personality they have at work or at school, but they have a personality when they want to play. And I think, especially as academy coaches, and even as you go into the first team, I think it's our responsibility to try to bring that personality from them as much as possible. And I think sometimes restricting them in game models can kind of take away from that.
And so then tell us about then, so you're at one of the best academies in the country, world-class facility, top-drawer staff. You're standing there on a cold, windy night in December. I've been there, and you're thinking, where could I end up? No, I'm joking. So you're thinking, like, tell us about then this amazing opportunity in Colombia, this massive, life-changing thing you've told. Tell us about how that came about.
Yeah, so do you know what? You're not too wrong. Middle of December, it's freezing cold. The wind hit, and I went, hold on a minute, I'm done. No, so to be fair, it was networking, but by accident. And one of the things when I first started at Brighton, I said I wanted to do was grow my football network, because as much as there's a million coaches out there who have fantastic knowledge, but if people don't know what you know, it kind of stops you in your track. So this opportunity came about. We were in Salzburg, and we had a game against the academy that I now work with in one of the tournament games. And I had always been practicing Spanish because lockdown, you needed something to do. So I started my Duolingo streak, which is almost at 2,000 days now, so I'm happy. And so I tried to speak Spanish to some of the players, and one of the coaches, he was German and spoke some Spanish, so just to get an idea of what they did. And just kind of built a relationship with that coach. And then it just so happened, maybe a couple of weeks later, an opportunity popped up on my LinkedIn. And just because I'd had that conversation, I knew the name of the academy. So I was like, okay, I know who they are. And then my plan, and my missus will vouch for me, my plan was, I want to go out there for 4 weeks in the summer, practice my Spanish, see what they do the following year. So it would have been 2024 in August, and this all happened. So my plan was 2025, 4 weeks, my missus is a teacher, she'd come out for 2 weeks with me, we'll go to Colombia, have a great time, and I could practice some Spanish. And this is a conversation that I planned to have with the owner of the academy. And we had a real short conversation. I said, here's my CV, but if I'm honest, what I'm really thinking about is coming out and supporting you guys and seeing what I can do with my Spanish. And his response was, I think we'd like to give you the job. Like, I want to speak to my partner, but let's have like a real conversation about this. And I was like, okay, I'm at Brighton. I've got a fantastic facility. I've got some top players. I've had a real good progression over my time, so I think that the hierarchy think well of me. So why would I go to an abstract city in Colombia? And then, so we had a conversation, and the more I thought about it, they really showed how much that they wanted me to help their academy. And so, for instance, my missus, like I mentioned, she's a teacher. And I said, well, I need to speak to my missus and I need to speak to the club because I'm not sure. They said, what did your missus do? She's a teacher. I will give her a job too. She can teach the boys English. So they were doing things that were trying to really give me the opportunity to be out there, frankly. I said, well, going to Colombia, I don't know if that's any good for my career. And they said, what we'll do, we'll put you in touch with Salzburg and go out there for a couple of weeks and we'll try to get you one more trip across a year. So to me, it was opening up an avenue that I'd never considered before. So I could go to Austria, I could potentially make links in Brazil, potentially make links in New York, and then I'm going to really go and lead. And then this kind of links back to the game model stuff that we alluded to a bit earlier. What do I do because I believe in it? And what do I do because I've worked in an academy that says I should do it? So having like a blank slate that says, go on then, Kai, see what you're about. And it's competitive. So academy football, I love it. The one thing I think it lacks is competition. We need more competition in English football. And here, everything is about competition. Like everything. So the idea of playing out from the back or building, when they'll first get it, so this is how we're going to do it, and then they go after you and they don't care that they've got none of the ball and they're winning 2-0. It's like, okay, I've got to adjust here. And that's the reason really. So for the challenge, and that's how it came about. So eventually I kind of said, yeah, let's go and do it. Right, we're top, and that doorway I think is always open. So, but it's a life experience I couldn't say no to.
So could I just jump in on that competition thing? Went on a tour recently, right, and the young junior team called Argentinos, they just do things differently in South America. They are built differently. From a competition, it was fierce. The fans, you know, the things we've seen in the stands with Boca Juniors versus River Plate, and it's like that happens at under 11s and 12s and 13s. And the passion, one thing I got from seeing these Argentinos, I got a wonderful video of these kids singing their football club songs, Argentinos songs, and rocking. It's like, in terms of football culture, wow, if you're the kind of guy, like you sound, Kai, you're stimulated by competition and it needs more. You know, this, when I said it before, so I don't want to go off on tangent, but this whole liberal thing about participation medals and this and that is not how you produce elite performing athletes in any sport. And it's interesting that you said that, Kai, because I kind of agree with you as well. I think it's not a coincidence that South Americans win the most Ballon d'Ors. You know, they're up there competing in World Cup finals. In terms of football culture, I think it's a huge thing, and I think we shouldn't be scared of it, and we need to get away from the dirty word winning. And yeah, it's okay for kids to want to win and hate losing. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's really evident in my experiences that I've had of seeing the Argentinos teams and all these young teams. Like I say, they was 11 years old, these kids, but wow, they had a passion that you can see it's in their culture. You can see from yeah. So it's fierce.
I think as well. It's like we had a conversation the other day with someone on another podcast. I think that's where we've gone away from too much. I think, you know, like I said, you know, the best times I had where we were like had good groups, for example, at Chelsea, where you just the intensity's going, you're fighting every time you try, you know, those duels through 1v1s or 4v4s, 6v6s, they're going at it. Where it become a little bit more like you say, oh, you go over here, make a plan, come back again here, and it's all like a bit vanilla. And you lose
it needs
that.
to be a bit edgier, doesn't it?
That intensity, that bite. And that's the thing. I think we've gone too much that way. You know. And listen, you want players making decisions. You want to make decisions on the ball and on the fight. You want to, you know, that intensity, that gladiator type thing. Obviously, just let them kill each other. No, but I think tell us about. Yeah, exactly. Like it's just, you know, that's like you say. You know, you look and you travel around and see these, you know, these environments. They have that competitive cauldron. That's what you need all the time. You're fighting to get to the top and be better. Let's talk about your role in head of methodology and your stats. I mean, first of all, what's all that about? What does all that mean? You know, you don't get a lot of that in England, do you? The methodology, essentially, because that role. I'm joking, obviously. You're quite predominant in you. Yeah, it's quite predominant. You get it more in Europe. You see it quite a lot in Europe now, and obviously, I know what it means. I know some people do that. But just tell listeners, though, what, in essence, what that really means in your day-to-day role, aligned with your coaching, basically.
Yeah. So, because we have come so far as an academy over the last 8 years, I think sometimes because you're going so quickly, or the plane's taken off as it's still being built. That analogy. And I think sometimes you need somebody from the outside who can go, this is really good, but how are we going to land it? Hold on a minute, we haven't got any food. So again, using the analogy. So my day-to-day is very much on the grass, because that for me is my bread and butter. It's what I love to do. I love to be close to the players. I love that connection. And then kind of my afternoons, as it were, is being spent, how can I put something together that in 5 years from now, when I've moved on from Colombia, that the academy can say, this is what we stand for in terms of our playing style, in terms of the types of players we look for, in terms of making sure that we create game models for the needs of the players. So that is kind of how I'm balancing the role at the moment. So we've just got knocked out on the weekend in a quarter-final. So now my 80-20 is going to flip. So I've got a lot more time to do methodology stuff. But so that's ultimately what my objectives will be. Can I put together something that the day that I leave, I know it has longevity, where the academy can go, we've got some real ideas about what we're trying to go after for the next 10 years, and this is how it looks for us. And then alongside that, to try to build some connections in England as well with football clubs, because we've got some real good connections, we've got a lot of good players, and frankly, they can play. So let's open as many opportunities for these boys as possible, because they're hungry. They're hungry.
So the methodology bit covers everything from game model. Is it like in individual assets of players, or in like recruitment style, what you're looking for, or the pathway? Is it all encompassing?
All encompassing. So the recruitment mainly is done by the owners. So the two gentlemen have a lot of experience in kind of scouting, not only in Colombia but in their previous roles as well. But predominantly, or the first step that I'd like to take is the individual stuff. So can we get a set of ideas or characteristics or behaviours that we want to assess in our players? Therefore, we can help them develop whatever it is that they're lacking, or really sharpen what it is that they're good at. So that's kind of the first step that I've kind of taken. Then the next step beyond that will be, how can we make sure that with the skill set we have in our players, so for instance, our 17s now that we've just finished the season with, they are physically, some of them are absolute animals. We've got some good technicians in there, and we've got 4 strikers who love to score goals. Whereas the 15s who I'll be kind of taking on as of next year, they're far more technical. So how do we make sure that they still look like an academia team and can do what they are good at, frankly? So trying to put something together that means that any coach that steps into the role with me or after me can say, this is how the academy do it, this is what they believe in. And the thing that I probably didn't consider is the cultural side as well. So I'm an Englishman, the owners are German with one Colombian, but all of the players are Colombian. So they have a different way of doing it, seeing it, feeling it. So how do I make sure that actually their beliefs aren't missed as well? What they value isn't missed as well? So yeah, that's kind of what the steps that I'm trying to take. The individual, then the team stuff, and then maybe a little bit later down the line, the connections in England.
We've done a podcast before recently, Saul, didn't we, with the Right to Dream thing, and it's gone even more high profile now, with Kudos coming to Tottenham now as well and getting a bigger move. It looks a fantastic signing for Tottenham, and everyone could see his potential. So are we expecting the next Faustino Asprilla or Juan Pablo Angel from the project? Luis Diaz, the top, some of the greatest forwards. Is that the objective though, to get them into mainstream Europe, obviously, and
Absolutely.
Get them at the highest possible level, similar?
Absolutely. So one of our players, January, just gone signed for Salzburg. His name's Micah, a little midfield player. And the idea is that if we can get 1 a year to Salzburg, we would be doing a fantastic job in our mind. Like 1 every 2 years is still a really good job, and then 1 every 3 is probably about right. Because Salzburg,
I mean, so is that the business model then? Is it to sell the players to European clubs that funds the academy? I assume that's the.
Yeah, ultimately, and from what I understand, and again, I haven't dug into the details of the numbers and the business side of the world, but from what I understand, like, the first move is almost minimal, because we just want the boys to get out and have the chance. The idea is that later down the line, if they build a career, that is what helps pay for the academy.
Oh, right,
yes. Because the idea, as you can imagine, signing an 18-year-old for
payments, But
yeah.
I
So
can't remember the name from where they're from, their club where they're from. That's
exactly.
interesting. Tell us about the lifestyle there then. So you said you came over with your other half from England, did you? From London or wherever near living in the south? And so tell us how that's been. So then tell us about the acclimatisation. Literally, what's that been like? Moving to a different culture. How's your partner find it? That sort of thing. What's happening, everyone? I hope you're enjoying the show. Just a quick one to tell you about my new one-to-one coaches training course. If you're a one-to-one coach or you're interested in individual development, I've created a course specifically for you. So not only does this break down how to structure one-to-one courses in terms of the methodology and the ideas behind it, it also gives you a full library of sessions with myself and Premier League players, academy players, grassroots players. Not only that, if you're interested in starting a business or developing your social media, I give you tips on these areas, as well as asking some of the top practitioners in the game. So some of the top one-to-one coaches I know, not only in academy and pro football, but also in private football as well. You get your advice in that. Now, if you're interested in that, you can also check out an exclusive 20% discount offer for this course as well. This is very exclusive and for a short time only. Check it out. It's one-to-one coach 20 off. You can get exclusive discount. Just follow the information in the bio to check out the new course. There's nothing else like it in the world. The first course for one-to-one coaches. And this is approved, remember, to take players to the Premier League. Check out the information and check out this very exclusive discount, which will not last for long. But without further ado, let's get into the show.
Mixed, as you can imagine. Some days you wake up and think, this is absolutely fantastic. And other days you think, I don't speak the language. For instance, a couple of months ago, and it's not funny, I'm laughing, but it's not funny. A couple of months ago, I flew back to England to finish my Alemana diploma. And my partner stayed in Colombia. She's got some friends who live locally but don't speak a great deal of English. And there was a power cut. So she had no internet, no TV, and she didn't know how to kind of sort it out. But small things like that, if that happens in England, it's easy. You know the language, you know how to sort it. It's where she's like ringing me while I'm on the course. I'm like, I don't know what you got me to do. I'm 5,000 miles away. Like, go next door, speak. So my boss lives 2 doors down. Speak to the boss. He'll figure out. But just those moments where you're like, you don't realise how easy it is when you know the world you're in, right? But in my experience, I've really loved it. I'm a little bit further along in my Spanish speaking than my partner is, so that's probably why I probably found that acclimation a little bit easier. But we've seen some beautiful places. We've seen a genuine island paradise and a little holiday as well. So we went away when we had a few days. Like, it's very different to England, which the speed is the difference. So when you work in an academy, the speed is always on in England. There's always something. There's always a meeting, a session, a parent. It's always on, and then you go home and you sleep, and then you wake up and you do it again. Whereas here, the speed of the culture is probably 2 notches down. So when you're working, but when you're not, you're not. So I'm probably the one pushing for more, and I'm pretty laid back in myself. I'm probably want to say, we could probably do a bit more here. And they're like, no, don't worry, we'll get it done. So I'm like, no problem, I'll take that. So yeah, no, it's been a good 7 months, 8 months of slowing down and still having a real emphasis on developing the boys and trying to win games.
And what's your aspirations? What else? What's give us your short-term view, your long-term view, what you like to do in the game?
I'm the biggest cop-out when it comes to this question. So what I'll say is, anytime it's been asked, I always say, I just want to be as good as I can at coaching. So when I went to Brighton, I didn't have an aspiration of getting a job. I had an aspiration of learning, getting my A license and building my networks, for instance. Now that I've come to Colombia, I've got a similar set of objectives. So my short term is, I want to be fluent in Spanish. I want to have strong connections in at least 2 of the 4 Red Bull groups. And I want to have a real clear idea of how I believe football should be played as a game model or methodology, because it's for me to do, not an academy. So that's my short term. Medium term, I believe that if you're really good and you're trying to be good and learn, then doors open and opportunities open as a result of that. My long term objective is to leave a legacy in the game for people who look like me or have had an experience like me to know that they can do something in the game. Having not played professionally, being a black coach in the professional game, my long-term objective when I'm 70 is for someone to say, do you know what? He was able to make an impact with that group of players, with that academy, with that football club, and he never kicked the ball in his life. Therefore, I know that I can do that too. And again, it's very vague, and I don't know what role that looks like. It could be that I get an 18 job one day and I'm like, I'm making a fantastic impact, so I'm here. Or it could be actually, I want to go into first team football because there's no one there that's doing that and I love it. Or maybe I go and I become an academy manager in 15 years time and I'm making a different impact. For me, if I love it, I'm learning and I'm making an impact for people who I believe have to have an avenue built for them, then I'm happy.
Kai, mate, top. It's been inspirational, mate. Thanks for your time.
No, I appreciate you, Saul. Thank you for the time, and you too, Glenn.
Cheers, Kaya. Take care, mate.
Cheers, bro.